The bullet shattered the saloon window 3 inches from Victoria Durant's head, and she knew her father's enemies had finally come to collect their blood debt. Glass exploded inward as she dropped behind the bar, her heart hammering against her ribs while shouts erupted outside in the dusty streets of San Bernardino. The year was 1878, and the California town had grown prosperous from the railroad and cattle trade, but prosperity bred greed, and greed bred violence. Her father, Thomas Durant, had been the town's most successful cattle broker until someone put a knife in his back 6 months ago. Victoria had taken over his business, determined to honor his memory and prove a woman could manage accounts and negotiate prices as well as any man. But the Garrett gang had other ideas about who controlled the cattle trade in San Bernardino. Victoria Durant! The voice that boomed through the broken window belonged to Cole Garrett himself, a man whose reputation for cruelty stretched from California to the New Mexico territory. You got 2 choices, girl. Come out and sign over your father's contracts, or we burn this whole town to the ground, starting with you inside that saloon. She pressed her back against the wooden cabinet beneath the bar, her cotton dress soaking up spilled whiskey from the floor. The saloon belonged to Martha Henderson, a widow who had given Victoria a place to conduct business meetings away from the prying eyes of men who thought a 22-year-old woman had no place negotiating cattle deals. Now she had brought death to Martha's doorstep. "How many are there?" Victoria whispered to Samuel, the elderly bartender who had crawled beside her, his weathered face pale with fear. "I counted at least 20 when they rode in," Samuel said, his voice shaking. "They got men stationed at every road out of town, north, south, east, west, even got sharpshooters on the rooftops. Nobody's getting in or out of San Bernardino tonight." Victoria's mind raced through possibilities. The sheriff had ridden to Los Angeles 3 days ago to testify in a trial. His deputy was barely 19 and would be no match for Garrett's men. The few cowboys and workers in town were good men, but they had families to protect. She would not ask them to die for her father's business deals. "There's got to be a way out," she muttered, more to herself than Samuel. "Miss Durant, even if there was, where would you go? They'll hunt you across every mile of California." Another shot rang out, this one punching through the wall above their heads. Victoria flinched but forced herself to think. Her father had taught her that every problem had a solution if you looked hard enough. He had been a careful man, methodical, always planning 3 steps ahead. That caution had kept him alive for 56 years in a dangerous business until someone got close enough to put a blade between his ribs in a dark alley. "You got 5 minutes, Miss Durant." Garrett's voice carried the tone of a man accustomed to getting his way. "Then we start shooting everyone we find. The blood will be on your hands." Victoria closed her eyes, trying to recall every conversation she had ever had with her father about San Bernardino. He had known this town inside and out, every building, every family, every secret. There had to be something, some detail she was forgetting. Then it came to her. A conversation from 2 years ago when her father had come home excited about a new cattle route. He had been drinking whiskey, unusual for him, and talking about the old Spanish missions that had first settled California. He mentioned that San Bernardino had been built near an abandoned mission, and that the padres who built those missions always included escape routes in case of Indian attacks. "The mission," Victoria breathed. "Samuel, the old Spanish mission ruins northwest of town, do you know them?" "Sure, everyone knows them. Just old walls and rubble now. What about it?" "My father told me the missions had tunnels, secret passages the priests used to escape danger. If those tunnels are still there, if they still go somewhere useful, maybe there's a way out of town the Garrett gang doesn't know about." Samuel's eyes widened. "That's a mighty big if, Miss Durant. And even if such a tunnel exists, how would you find it? How would you even get to the mission ruins with armed men watching every street?" "The mission is northwest, you said. This saloon backs up to Miller's stable, doesn't it? And Miller's property extends almost to the edge of town in that direction?" "It does, but then we go through the back, stay low, move building to building. It's nearly dark. If we're careful and quiet, maybe we can make it." "Miss Durant, I'm 67 years old. I can't be crawling through the desert in the dark. You don't have to come, Samuel. This is my fight, not yours. But I need to know if you'll cover for me. Give me time to get away before Garrett realizes I'm gone. The old man studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Your father was a good man. He'd want me to help his daughter. Go on, then. I'll tell Garrett you're hiding upstairs, buy you maybe 15 minutes before they realize I'm lying. Victoria squeezed his weathered hand. Thank you. And Samuel, get yourself and Martha somewhere safe as soon as you can. She crawled toward the back door of the saloon, staying below the windows. Outside, she could hear Garrett's men shouting to each other, their boots heavy on the wooden boardwalks. The sun was setting over the San Bernardino mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. In an hour, it would be full dark, which would help, but it also meant navigating rough terrain without much light. The back door opened onto a narrow alley that smelled of horses and hay from the adjacent stable. Victoria slipped out, pressing herself against the wall. Her dress was impractical for running, but she had no time to change even if she had other clothes available. She yanked up the hem and tied it into a knot at her knee, creating a makeshift shorter skirt that would allow her to move faster. Voices drifted from the street beyond the stable. She had to move now while Garrett was still focused on the front of the saloon. Victoria ran in a crouch across the alley and into Miller's stable. The horses inside whinnied softly, but no human voices responded. Miller must have already fled or was hiding in his house. She could not blame him. She moved through the stable and out the far side where Miller's property extended toward the outskirts of town. The mission ruins were perhaps a mile away across open ground dotted with sagebrush and Joshua trees. She would be exposed, visible to anyone watching from the town's edge. But she had no choice. Victoria took a deep breath and ran. The ground was hard and uneven beneath her boots, and within minutes her lungs burned from exertion. She had been raised a proper lady, educated in San Francisco, taught to pour tea and discuss literature. Her father had been wealthy enough to give her that life. But he had also taught her to ride, to shoot, and to never give up when the odds turned against you. Those lessons seemed far more valuable now than anything she had learned about proper etiquette. Behind her, a shout went up. Someone had seen her. Victoria pushed herself harder, her legs pumping as she dodged around a cluster of rocks. A gunshot cracked through the twilight and dirt exploded near her feet. She zigzagged, making herself a harder target even as her heart threatened to burst from her chest. The ruins emerged from the gloom ahead, crumbling adobe walls that had once been part of a grand mission compound. Victoria crashed through an opening where a door had once stood and pressed herself against the interior wall, gasping for breath. Her hands were shaking, and sweat soaked through her dress despite the cooling evening air. She could hear horses now, multiple riders coming fast across the desert. They would be here in minutes. She had to find that tunnel, if it even existed, before they caught her. The interior of the mission was a maze of broken walls and collapsed ceilings. Debris littered the floor and shadows made it difficult to see clearly. Victoria searched frantically, running her hands along walls, looking for any sign of a hidden passage. Her father had said the tunnels were concealed, designed to be invisible to attackers. But where would priests hide an escape route? The altar. If she were a priest trying to save her own life, she would put the escape closest to the most sacred space, where she would likely be during an attack. Victoria stumbled through the ruins toward what remained of the altar area, identifiable by a broken stone cross lying in the rubble. She fell to her knees and began pushing aside debris, ignoring the pain as sharp edges cut her palms. Her fingers found a metal ring embedded in the stone floor, nearly invisible beneath layers of dirt and sand. She pulled with all her strength. The stone slab lifted slightly, revealing darkness beneath. Victoria hauled harder, and the slab shifted enough to reveal a narrow opening descending into the earth. Hoofbeats thundered outside. Men's voices shouted orders. Victoria did not hesitate. She lowered herself into the opening, her boots finding crude stone steps carved into the earth. She pulled the slab back over the opening as best she could from below, plunging herself into complete darkness. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm her. She could not see her own hand in front of her face. The air was stale and thick, and the weight of the earth above pressed down on her consciousness. But her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Fear is a tool, Victoria. Use it to stay sharp, but never let it control you." She descended the steps carefully, one hand on the wall to guide her. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for her shoulders, and the ceiling was low enough that she had to duck her head. But it was moving, sloping downward and then leveling out. She could feel air movement against her face, which meant the tunnel led somewhere with an opening to the surface. Victoria lost track of time in the darkness. She might have been walking for 10 minutes or an hour. Her hands scraped against rough stone, and twice she stumbled over rubble that had fallen from the ceiling, but she kept moving forward, driven by the knowledge that Garrett's men were somewhere above, searching for her. Finally, she saw light ahead. Not bright sunlight, but the dim glow of moonlight filtering through an opening. Victoria moved toward it, emerging into the night air at the base of a rocky hillside. She was outside San Bernardino, perhaps 2 miles from town, based on the position of the lights in the distance. The tunnel had carried her beyond the perimeter of Garrett's men. She had escaped. But now what? She had no horse, no supplies, no weapon. She was alone in the California desert at night with a gang of killers who would not stop hunting her. She needed help, and she needed it from someone Garrett would not expect. Victoria oriented herself by the stars, another skill her father had taught her. Northeast of San Bernardino lay several cattle ranches, including the Foster Spread, one of the largest operations in Southern California. Her father had done business with the Fosters for years, but Garrett would expect her to seek help there. He would have men watching the obvious ranches. Southwest, however, lay the smaller homesteads and farms. And one ranch in particular came to mind, the Fairfax Ranch, operated by a man named Vincent Fairfax. Her father had mentioned him several times, always with a tone of respect. Vincent Fairfax was a cowboy who had saved enough money to buy his own land, building a modest but successful operation breeding horses. More importantly, her father had said Vincent Fairfax was a man who paid his debts and kept his word. 3 years ago, Thomas Durant had extended credit to Vincent when a drought killed half his herd. Vincent had paid back every cent within 2 years. That kind of integrity was rare, and Victoria needed someone with integrity right now. She started walking southwest, guided by the stars and the distant silhouette of the mountains. The desert was cold at night, and her dress provided little warmth. Her feet ached in boots designed for boardwalks, not hiking across rough terrain, but she kept moving, because stopping meant dying. Hours passed. The moon climbed higher, then began its descent. Victoria's throat was parched, and her lips cracked from the dry air. She was beginning to wonder if she had miscalculated the direction when she saw the flicker of a fire in the distance. Caution warred with desperation. The fire could belong to anyone. Drifters, outlaws, or even Garrett's men spreading out to search for her. But she had no other options. She was too tired, too thirsty, and too lost to continue wandering the desert alone. Victoria approached the fire slowly, using what little cover the landscape provided. As she drew closer, she could make out a single figure sitting beside the flames, a bedroll spread out nearby. A horse was picketed a short distance away, a sturdy roan gelding with good lines. The man by the fire wore typical cowboy attire. Dusty trousers, a worn shirt, a vest, and a hat that shadowed his face. A gun belt hung on his saddle, within reach, but not on his person. She must have made a noise, or perhaps he simply had good instincts because his head snapped up and his hand moved toward the saddle. "I would not do that if I were you," Victoria said, stepping into the firelight with her hands raised. "I am unarmed and mean you no harm." The man froze, studying her. In the firelight, Victoria could see he was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that needed cutting and several days of stubble on his jaw. His eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing about her appearance. "You are a long way from anywhere to be wandering alone at night, miss," he said finally. His voice was deep and carried a hint of an accent she could not quite place. Eastern, maybe. "And judging by the state of you, I would guess you're in some kind of trouble." "You would be correct." Victoria lowered her hands slowly. "My name is Victoria Durant. I need help." Recognition flickered across his face. "Durant? As in Thomas Durant? The cattle broker?" "He was my father. He died 6 months ago." "I heard about that. I'm sorry for your loss." He gestured to the fire. "Sit down before you fall down. You look half dead." Victoria did not need to be told twice. Her legs gave out as she sank to the ground near the warmth of the fire. The man pulled a canteen from his saddle and handed it to her without comment. She drank deeply, the water like salvation on her parched throat. "Thank you," she managed. "You are Vincent Fairfax, are you not?" His eyebrows rose. "I am. How did you know?" "My father spoke of you. He said you were an honorable man. I'm hoping he was right, because I have nowhere else to turn." Vincent added a piece of wood to the fire, his movements careful and controlled. "Why don't you tell me what happened?" Victoria told him everything. The Garrett gang surrounding San Bernardino, their ultimatum, her escape through the mission tunnel, her desperate flight across the desert. Vincent listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as the story unfolded. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Cole Garrett is bad news," he said finally. "He has been trying to control the cattle trade in this region for years. Your father was one of the few brokers who stood up to him. With Thomas gone, Garrett figured you would be easy to intimidate." "He figured wrong." A slight smile touched Vincent's lips. "Apparently so, but you realize he will not stop hunting you? Men like Garrett do not accept being defied, especially not by a woman. No offense intended." "None taken. I know what I'm up against." Victoria met his eyes across the fire. "That is why I need help. My father said you were a man who paid his debts. He extended you credit when you needed it, and you repaid him in full. I am asking you to repay that debt now. Help me get somewhere safe, somewhere I can figure out my next move." Vincent studied her for a long moment, and Victoria found herself unable to look away. His eyes were a striking blue-gray, like storm clouds over the ocean. There was something solid about him, a quiet competence that reminded her of her father. This was a man who had built something from nothing, who had survived in a harsh land through skill and determination. "I owed your father a debt," Vincent said slowly, "and I always pay what I owe. But you should know, helping you could bring Garrett's wrath down on my ranch. I have worked for 5 years to build what I have. Are you asking me to risk all of that?" The question was fair, and Victoria had no good answer. She was asking him to put everything on the line for a woman he had never met. It was selfish and dangerous and probably foolish. "I have no right to ask that of you," she said quietly, "but I have nowhere else to go and no one else to turn to. If you can at least point me toward the next town, give me enough water to make the journey, I will not ask for more." Vincent shook his head. "The next town is 30 miles east, and Garrett probably has men watching the roads in every direction. You would never make it on foot." He sighed, a sound of resignation and determination mixed together. "My ranch is 10 miles south of here. You can stay there until we figure out a plan. I have 2 ranch hands who work for me, good men who can be trusted. We will keep you safe." Relief flooded through Victoria so powerfully that tears sprang to her eyes. She blinked them back, refusing to break down in front of this stranger who was offering her salvation. "Thank you. I will find a way to repay you, I swear it." "We can worry about repayment later. Right now you need rest. We will ride out at first light. It is too dangerous to travel in the dark, and my horse cannot carry both of us for 10 miles without rest." Vincent pulled a blanket from his pack and handed it to her. "You can have my bedroll. I will keep watch." "You do not need to do that. I can take a watch." "Miss Durant, you look like you're about to collapse. No offense, but you would fall asleep in 5 minutes. Get some rest. We have a long ride tomorrow." Victoria wanted to argue, to prove she was not some delicate lady who needed coddling, but exhaustion was already pulling at her, and the warmth of the fire was too inviting to resist. She wrapped herself in the blanket and lay down on the bedroll, her body aching from the long night. "Why are you out here?" she asked, fighting to keep her eyes open. "In the middle of the desert at night?" Vincent poked at the fire with a stick. "I was scouting for strays. Some of my horses wandered off during a storm last week. I have been tracking them." "Did you find them?" "3 of them, still looking for 2 more. He glanced at her. "Go to sleep, Miss Durant. Everything will look better in the morning." Victoria doubted that, but she was too tired to argue. She closed her eyes and let the exhaustion claim her, her last conscious thought being that Vincent Fairfax had kind eyes despite the hardness of his profession. She woke to the smell of coffee and the pale light of dawn. Vincent was crouched by the fire, a battered pot heating over the flames. He glanced up as she stirred. "Morning. Coffee will be ready in a minute." Victoria sat up, wincing as every muscle in her body protested. She felt like she had been trampled by horses. "Did you sleep at all? Enough?" He poured coffee into a tin cup and handed it to her. "We should move soon. The longer we stay in one place, the more likely Garrett's men will spot us." The coffee was strong and bitter, but Victoria drank it gratefully. As the caffeine cleared her mind, reality settled back in. She was a fugitive, running from a gang of killers dependent on the kindness of a stranger. Her father's business was lost, her home was gone, and she had no idea what the future held. "What are you thinking?" Vincent asked, watching her face. "That my life has fallen apart in the span of one night?" "It could be worse. You could be dead." "There is that." Victoria managed a weak smile. "Thank you again for helping me. I know this is not your fight." Vincent stood and began packing his gear. "Your father helped me when I had nothing. He could have demanded immediate payment when the drought hit, could have seized my land, but he gave me time, trusted me to make good. That kind of trust is worth something. Besides," he added, his expression darkening, "I have no love for men like Cole Garrett. The world would be better off without his kind." They broke camp quickly, Vincent working with the practiced efficiency of a man who had spent years living rough. He saddled his horse, a sturdy roan gelding named Copper, and helped Victoria mount behind him. It was improper sharing a horse with a man she barely knew, but propriety seemed like a luxury she could no longer afford. "Hold on tight," Vincent said. "Copper is strong, but carrying 2 is hard work. I will take it easy, but you need to keep your balance." Victoria wrapped her arms around his waist, acutely aware of the solid muscle beneath his shirt. She could feel his breathing, steady and controlled, and the warmth of his body against hers. It was strangely intimate, and she found herself blushing despite the circumstances. They rode south as the sun climbed higher, turning the desert into a furnace. Vincent kept them moving at a steady pace, not too fast to exhaust the horse, but quick enough to cover ground. They stayed off the main trails, using his knowledge of the land to follow paths that would be harder to track. "How long have you been ranching?" Victoria asked, partly out of curiosity and partly to break the silence. 5 years. Before that, I worked as a cowboy on other men's spreads. Saved every penny I could, slept under the stars more nights than not. When I finally had enough for a down payment on land, I bought the worst property I could find at a price I could afford, spent 2 years making it livable. That must have been hard work." "It was, but it was mine. That made all the difference." "My father built his business from nothing too. He started as a ranch hand in Texas, worked his way up to foreman, then saved enough to become a broker. He always said the things you build yourself matter more than anything you inherit." "Your father was a wise man." They fell into a companionable silence, broken only by the rhythmic sound of Copper's hooves on the hard ground. Victoria found herself studying the landscape with new eyes. She had always seen the desert as harsh and unforgiving, but there was a beauty to it too. The way the light played across the distant mountains, the stark elegance of a Joshua tree against the sky, the subtle colors in the rocks and sand. It was a land that demanded respect, but rewarded those who learned to live with it. There, Vincent said, pointing ahead. That is my ranch? Victoria followed his gesture and saw a cluster of buildings nestled in a shallow valley. There was a modest house, built of wood and stone, a barn larger than the house, several corrals, and what looked like a bunkhouse. It was not grand, but it looked solid and well maintained. Pride had built this place, and it showed in every detail. As they approached, two men emerged from the barn. Both were armed, their hands resting near their gun belts until they recognized Vincent. Then they relaxed, curiosity replacing wariness. "Boss," the taller of the two said. He was in his 30s, with sun-weathered skin and intelligent eyes. "We were starting to worry. You have been gone 2 days." "Found 3 of the strays," Vincent said, dismounting. He helped Victoria down, and she felt both men's eyes assessing her. "Jack, Henry, this is Miss Victoria Durant. She's going to be staying with us for a while. Victoria, these are my ranch hands, Jack Morrison and Henry Chen." Henry Chen was Chinese, Victoria realized, probably in his mid-20s, with the lean build of a man who worked hard for his living. He nodded politely to her, his expression friendly. "Madam," Jack said, "any relation to Thomas Durant?" "My father." "I am sorry for your loss. I met him once at a cattle auction. He seemed like a good man." Vincent quickly explained the situation, leaving out no details. Both men's expressions grew serious as the story unfolded. "Garrett," Jack spat the name like a curse, "that snake has needed killing for years." "Maybe so, but we are not killers, Marines," Vincent said firmly. "Our job is to keep Miss Durant safe until we can figure out a better plan. That means keeping our eyes open and being ready for trouble. Jack, I want you to ride into town tomorrow, see what you can learn. Be careful, and do not ask questions that will draw attention. Henry, you and I will secure the ranch. I want extra ammunition ready, and we need to set up a watch rotation." "You think Garrett will come here?" Henry asked. "I think Garrett will look everywhere until he finds her. We have to assume he will figure out eventually that she came to us." Victoria felt guilt twist in her stomach. "I am putting you all in danger. Maybe I should leave. Try to make it to Los Angeles on my own." "That is not happening," Vincent said flatly. "Garrett has too many men, and they know this territory too well. You would not make it 10 miles. No, you stay here where we can protect you." "He is right, madam," Henry added. 3 men with rifles and good cover can hold off a lot of attackers, and the boss is the best shot in the county." Vincent looked embarrassed by the praise. "Henry exaggerates, but we can defend this place if we have to. Come on, let me show you the house. You can clean up and get some proper rest." The house was simple but comfortable, with a main room that served as kitchen and living space, and 2 smaller bedrooms. Vincent's bedroom was neat and spare, with a bed, a dresser, and little else. The second bedroom was being used for storage. "I will move the supplies out," Vincent said. "You can have this room. It is not much, but the bed is decent and you will have privacy. I cannot take your bedroom." "You are not. This is the spare room. I will have it cleared out in an hour." True to his word, Vincent and Henry moved boxes and equipment out of the room, revealing a simple bed frame with a straw mattress, a small table, and a wooden chair. It was basic, but after the night she had endured, it looked like luxury to Victoria. "There is a wash basin in the main room," Vincent said, "and I will have Henry heat some water so you can clean up properly. We do not have any women's clothes, but I can lend you some trousers and a shirt if you want something more practical than that dress." Victoria looked down at her ruined dress, torn and stained from her flight through the desert. "I would appreciate that." An hour later, dressed in borrowed clothes that were too large but infinitely more practical, Victoria felt almost human again. She had washed the grime from her face and hands, brushed the tangles from her hair as best she could, and changed out of her destroyed dress. Vincent's clothes hung loose on her smaller frame, but she cinched the trousers with a belt and rolled up the sleeves of the shirt. It felt strange to wear men's clothing, but also liberating. She could move freely without skirts tangling around her legs. She emerged from the bedroom to find Vincent cooking at the stove. The smell of frying bacon made her stomach growl loudly enough that he heard it and grinned. When did you last eat? Yesterday morning, I think, before everything happened. Sit down, food will be ready in a few minutes. Victoria sat at the rough wooden table and watched Vincent work. He moved with the same quiet efficiency he brought to everything else, cracking eggs into a pan, turning bacon, slicing bread. It occurred to her that this man did everything for himself out here. Cooking, cleaning, ranching, repairs. There was no woman to manage the household, no servants to handle the daily tasks. He was entirely self-sufficient. Do you ever get lonely? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Vincent glanced at her, surprised. Sometimes. But I stay busy enough that I do not have much time to think about it. Why do you ask? I was just thinking that you do everything yourself. It seems like a lot for one person. It is the life I chose. He served eggs and bacon onto 2 plates and brought them to the table. I could have stayed working for other men, living in bunkhouses, following orders, but I wanted something of my own. This is the price of independence. You do not want a family someday? Vincent was quiet for a moment, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. Maybe someday. But ranching is hard work, and I do not have much to offer a woman right now. I figured I would build the ranch up first, make it something worth sharing, then think about a family. They ate in silence for a few minutes, both hungry enough that conversation could wait. The food was simple but good, and Victoria felt her strength returning with each bite. What about you? Vincent asked. Were you planning to run your father's business forever? Never marry, have a family of your own? I plan to run the business, yes. As for marriage, Victoria shrugged. I have had suitors, but most men want a wife who will stay home, manage the household, and not involve herself in business matters. I am not good at being what they expect. Maybe you were looking at the wrong kind of men. Perhaps. Victoria met his eyes across the table. Or perhaps I'm simply too difficult for most men to handle. I doubt that is the problem. Vincent's tone was serious, but there was warmth in his eyes. Any man worth having would see your strength as an asset, not a flaw. The compliment caught Victoria off guard, and she felt heat rise to her cheeks. She looked away, suddenly flustered in a way that had nothing to do with danger or fear. The moment was broken by Jack entering the house, his expression grave. Boss, we have got a problem. There is dust rising on the North Road, multiple riders moving fast in this direction. Vincent was on his feet instantly. How many? Hard to say from this distance, at least 6, maybe more. Could be anyone, Vincent said, but his hand moved to his gun belt. Or it could be Garrett's men. Victoria, get in your room and stay there. Do not come out until I tell you it is safe. I want to help. The best way you can help is by staying hidden. If they are looking for you, I need to be able to say honestly that I have not seen you. Now go. Victoria wanted to argue, but the look in Vincent's eyes stopped her. This was his ranch, his rules. She had to trust him. She retreated to the bedroom and quietly closed the door, her heart pounding as she pressed her ear against the wood to listen. She heard the sound of horses arriving, the jingle of harnesses, boots on the porch. Then voices, multiple men talking. Afternoon, came an unfamiliar voice, rough and unfriendly. We are looking for someone, a woman, young, dark hair, goes by the name Victoria Durant. Seen anyone matching that description? Cannot say that I have. Vincent's voice was calm, almost bored. Why are you looking for her? That is our business. Her father owed some debts, and we aim to collect. You mind if we look around? I mind very much. This is private property. Now do not be difficult, friend. We are just doing our job. Cole Garrett sent us to search every ranch and farm in the area. We will be done in 5 minutes, then we will be out of your hair. And I am telling you no. You have no authority to search my property, and Cole Garrett has no authority over me. If Miss Durant were here, which she is not, I would not turn her over to the likes of you anyway. Now get off my land. There was a moment of tense silence. Victoria could barely breathe, terrified that the situation was about to explode into violence. "You are making a mistake," the voice said, low and threatening. "Garrett does not like people who interfere with his business." "Then Garrett and I have something in common because I do not like people who threaten me on my own property. You have 10 seconds to mount up and ride out, or I start shooting. And before you think about drawing on me, know that I have 2 rifles pointed at you from the barn right now. You will be dead before you clear leather." Another pause. Victoria could imagine the standoff. Men with hands near guns weighing their odds. "This is not over," the voice said finally. "It is for today. Now ride." The sound of horses departing. Victoria stayed frozen in the bedroom for long minutes until Vincent knocked on the door. "They are gone. You can come out." She emerged to find Vincent standing by the window watching the distant dust cloud of the departing riders. His jaw was tight and his hand still rested on his gun. "They will be back," he said quietly. "Maybe not today, but soon, and next time they will bring more men. I am so sorry. I never should have come here." Vincent turned to face her. "I made my choice. I do not regret it. But we need a plan. We cannot just sit here waiting for Garrett to gather his forces and overwhelm us." "What do you suggest?" "I suggest we take the fight to him. But first we need to know what we are up against. How many men does he have? Where are they positioned? What is he planning?" Vincent moved to the table and sat down, gesturing for Victoria to join him. "Tell me everything you know about Garrett and his operation." Victoria sat across from him and organized her thoughts. "My father kept records of everyone he did business with, including the information he learned about Garrett. Garrett runs cattle through the San Bernardino area, but he also has interests in mining and land speculation. He has been buying up properties cheap, forcing people to sell through intimidation. My father refused to work with him, which made Garrett angry. Several other brokers who crossed him ended up dead or disappeared. How does he get away with it? Where is the law? Garrett has friends in the territorial government. He pays the right people, makes the right donations. Local sheriffs either look the other way or find themselves voted out of office. The sheriff in San Bernardino is honest, but he is just one man against Garrett's entire organization." Vincent leaned back in his chair, thinking, "We need leverage. Something Garrett wants more than revenge, or we need to remove him from the equation entirely." "You mean kill him?" "I mean stop him permanently. Whether that means killing, capturing, or exposing him to authorities who cannot be bought, I do not know yet. But he will not stop hunting you until he gets what he wants or until he cannot hunt anymore." The cold logic of it made Victoria shiver. She had been raised to believe in law and order and civilized solutions to problems. But the frontier was not civilized, and men like Cole Garrett did not respect laws. Sometimes the only solution was frontier justice. "My father had evidence," Victoria said slowly. "Documents showing Garrett's illegal activities. Land frauds, intimidation, possibly even proof he ordered murders. My father was gathering the evidence to present to a federal marshal. I think that is why Garrett had him killed." Vincent straightened in his chair. "Do you still have these documents?" "They were hidden in my father's office in San Bernardino. When Garrett surrounded the town, I did not have time to retrieve them. I do not know if they are still there, or if Garrett has already found and destroyed them. If those documents still exist, they could be the key to stopping Garrett permanently. We need to get them." "That is impossible. San Bernardino is surrounded by his men. Even if we could get in, we could never get back out." "You got out," Vincent pointed out, "using a tunnel nobody knew about. Could we get back in the same way?" Victoria considered this. "Maybe, if the tunnel is still clear, but it opens inside the mission ruins, and from there we would need to get into town to my father's office and back out again without being caught. The office is in a building on Main Street, right in the center of town." "You are right. That is too dangerous." Vincent stood and paced to the window again. "But if we had those documents, we could take them to Los Angeles, present them to the federal marshal there. Garrett might have influence in the territory, but federal marshals answer to Washington. They cannot be bought so easily. So we are back to needing the documents, which we cannot get. We need help, more men. People Garrett would not expect." Vincent turned to face her. What if we recruited some of the honest ranchers in the area, men who have been hurt by Garrett's schemes? There are others like me who hate what he is doing but have not had the courage or the means to stand against him. You think they would help? For the right cause, with the right plan? Maybe. But we would need to approach them carefully. Garrett has eyes everywhere. Jack and Henry entered the house, and Vincent quickly filled them in on the plan. It is risky, Jack said, but it might work. I know at least 3 ranchers who would join us if they thought we had a real chance of bringing Garrett down. Pete Richardson, for one. Garrett tried to force him off his land last year. Pete is tough as nails and hates Garrett with a passion. Who else? Vincent asked. Tom Warner runs a small spread east of here. And maybe old Samuel Briggs. He is getting on in years, but he can still shoot straight, and he has 4 grown sons who work his ranch. That is not enough men to take on Garrett's whole gang, Henry pointed out. No, but it might be enough to get into San Bernardino, retrieve the documents, and get back out. We would not fight Garrett head on. We would use surprise and speed. Vincent looked at Victoria. Where exactly is your father's office? Above the general store on Main Street. There is an outside staircase in the back that leads to the office door. My father liked having a separate entrance so clients could come and go without drawing attention. That is good. We could approach from the back, minimize our exposure on the main street. Vincent moved to a shelf and pulled down a sheet of paper and a pencil. He began sketching a rough map. Show me the layout of the town as much as you can remember. For the next hour, Victoria and Vincent worked together to create a detailed plan of San Bernardino. She drew the streets and buildings from memory while he asked questions about distances, sight lines, and possible cover. Jack and Henry contributed their own knowledge of the town, and gradually a strategy began to form. We go in after dark, Vincent said. Use the mission tunnel like Victoria did. That gets us past Garrett's perimeter without being detected. We split into 2 groups. One group creates a distraction at the north end of town, draws Garrett's men away from Main Street. The other group goes to the office, retrieves the documents, and gets back to the tunnel. We regroup outside town and ride hard for Los Angeles before Garrett realizes what happened. What kind of distraction? Henry asked. Fire, maybe. Something big enough to require attention but not so big it endangers innocent people. An abandoned building or a haystack. Garrett's men will respond to it, which gives the second group their window. It could work, Jack said thoughtfully. But we need more men. At least 10, maybe 12. 6 to create the distraction and hold off Garrett's men. 6 to retrieve the documents. Then we start recruiting tomorrow, Vincent decided. Jack, you know the ranchers I mentioned. Can you approach them quietly? Feel them out? I can try. Do not tell them details. Just say we are planning to move against Garrett and ask if they want in. If they say yes, tell them to meet here 2 days from now at sunset. We will brief everyone then. Over the next 2 days, the ranch became a hub of quiet activity. Jack rode out each morning and returned with news. Pete Richardson was in along with 2 of his hands. Tom Warner agreed to help. Samuel Briggs and 3 of his sons pledged their support. By the evening of the second day, Vincent had commitments from 14 men, enough for the plan to work. During those 2 days, Victoria found herself drawn into the daily life of the ranch. She helped Henry tend the horses, learning how to brush them down and check their hooves for stones. She worked alongside Vincent repairing fence line, holding posts steady while he hammered them into place. She practiced shooting with an old rifle, trying to improve her accuracy under Vincent's patient instruction. Squeeze the trigger, do not pull it, Vincent said, standing close behind her to adjust her stance. And breathe out slowly as you fire. Let the shot surprise you. Victoria tried again, and this time the bottle she was aiming at exploded in a satisfying shower of glass. Better, Vincent said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. You are a fast learner. She turned to look at him, suddenly aware of how close he was standing. His hand was still on her shoulder from adjusting her stance, and his eyes were very blue in the afternoon sunlight. For a moment, neither of them moved, caught in something that felt larger than the danger surrounding them. Vincent, Victoria said softly, but she did not know how to finish the sentence. What was happening between them? Was it just the intensity of the situation, the forced proximity, the shared danger? Or was it something real? I know, he said quietly, as if he could read her thoughts. I feel it too. We barely know each other. I know enough. I know you are brave, smart, and loyal. I know you could have run away a dozen times, but you stayed to protect your father's legacy. I know being around you makes me feel like I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like this, with such simple honesty. The men who had courted her in San Francisco had used flowery words and elaborate compliments, but none of it had felt as real as Vincent's straightforward declaration. "This is a terrible time to start feeling this way," she whispered. "Probably the worst time possible," Vincent agreed. His hand moved from her shoulder to gently cup her cheek. "But I learned a long time ago that you cannot control when things happen. You can only control how you respond. And how are you responding?" Instead of answering with words, Vincent leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle at first, almost tentative, as if he was giving her the chance to pull away. But Victoria did not pull away. She leaned into the kiss, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart beating fast beneath her palms. The kiss deepened, and Victoria felt something shift inside her, like a door opening to a room she had not known existed. This was not the polite affection she had shared with her suitors in San Francisco. This was something raw and honest and utterly consuming. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I was not planning on that," he admitted. "Neither was I." Victoria smiled despite herself. "But I'm not sorry it happened." "Neither am I. But Victoria, you need to know something. After we do this, after we get those documents and take down Garrett, you'll be free to go wherever you want. You will have your father's business back, your life back. You do not owe me anything." "Is that what you think? That I would kiss you out of obligation? I think you have been through hell, and sometimes people mistake gratitude for something else. I do not want to be something you regret when your life returns to normal." Victoria pulled back to look him in the eyes. "Vincent Fairfax, you are many things, but you will never be something I regret. What I feel has nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with who you are. You could have turned me away, kept yourself safe, but you chose to help. You treat me like an equal, not some fragile thing that needs protecting. You are honest and good and exactly the kind of man I have been looking for my entire life without knowing it." Vincent's expression softened. "I am just a cowboy with a small ranch and more debts than assets. And I am a woman with nothing but the clothes on her back and a price on her head. We make quite a pair." He laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. "I suppose we do. All right, Miss Victoria Durant. When this is over, if you still feel the same way, I would very much like to court you properly. Dinners, dances, all the things a lady deserves. I will hold you to that promise." They might have said more, but Henry's voice called out from the barn, "Boss! Riders coming in!" The moment shattered, replaced by instant alertness. Vincent's hand moved to his gun as he and Victoria ran toward the house, but as they got closer, Jack emerged from the barn with a relieved expression. "It is Pete Richardson and his men," Jack called, "plus Tom Warner and the Briggs family. Looks like everyone is here." By nightfall, Vincent's small ranch was crowded with 14 hard-faced men who had all been wronged by Cole Garrett in one way or another. They gathered around a fire outside the house, and Vincent laid out the plan in detail. He used the map he and Victoria had created, explaining each step of the operation. "This is dangerous," Vincent said bluntly. "Some of us might not come back. If any man wants to leave now, there is no shame in it." No one moved. "All right, then." Vincent looked around the circle of faces. "We ride tomorrow night. Get some rest, check your weapons, and make your peace with whatever God you believe in. We are going to bring down Cole Garrett once and for all." The men dispersed to prepare, some bedding down in the barn, others preferring to sleep under the stars. Victoria found herself standing alone by the dying fire, staring into the coals and thinking about everything that could go wrong. Vincent appeared beside her, silent as always. Having second thoughts? About the plan? No. About dragging all these men into my fight? Yes. It is not just your fight anymore. Garrett has hurt most of these men or their families in some way. You gave them a chance to fight back. That is a gift. Or a death sentence. Maybe both. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Victoria, if things go wrong tomorrow night, if we get separated, you need to promise me something. What? Promise me you will run. Do not try to be a hero. Do not come back for me or anyone else. Just get to Los Angeles and give those documents to the federal marshal. That is what matters. Not me, not any of us. Stopping Garrett is all that counts. I cannot promise that. You have to. Victoria turned to face him. Would you run if our positions were reversed? If I was in danger, would you leave me behind? Vincent's jaw tightened. That is different. No, it is not. You do not get to ask me to do something you would not do yourself. They stood there, locked in a battle of wills, until finally Vincent sighed in defeat. You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met. Good. You should know what you're getting into. Despite the tension, he smiled. I think I'm starting to figure it out. He held out his hand. Come on, you should get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Victoria took his hand, marveling at how natural it felt. How right. They walked together to the house, and at the door to her borrowed room, Vincent paused. Whatever happens tomorrow, he said quietly, I want you to know that meeting you has been the best thing that has happened to me in a long time, maybe ever. Vincent. He kissed her again, and this time there was a desperation in it, a fear that tomorrow might take away this fragile new thing between them. When he pulled back, his eyes were intense. I will keep you safe, he promised, no matter what it takes. I know, and I will do the same for you. He smiled at that, though his eyes were sad. Good night, Victoria. Good night. She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart aching with emotions she could barely name. How had this happened so fast? How had a stranger become the most important person in her world in just a few days? But deep down, she knew the answer. Crisis stripped away pretense and revealed people's true selves. She had seen Vincent's true self, and it was beautiful. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Weapons were cleaned and loaded. Horses were saddled and checked. Vincent went over the plan 3 more times, making sure everyone understood their role. Victoria insisted on being part of the group going into town. And though Vincent argued, he finally relented when she pointed out that she was the only one who knew exactly where her father had hidden the documents. As the sun set, the group mounted up and began the ride towards San Bernardino. They traveled in silence, 14 men and 1 woman, united by a common enemy and a desperate plan. The desert was beautiful in the twilight, painted in shades of purple and gold, but Victoria barely noticed. Her mind was focused on what lay ahead. They reached the mission ruins well after full dark. The moon was only a thin crescent, which was good for staying hidden, but bad for navigating. Vincent led them to the entrance of the tunnel, and one by one they descended into the darkness, using hooded lanterns to light the way. The tunnel was even more claustrophobic with 15 people moving through it, and Victoria felt her anxiety rising as they made their way through the underground passage. But finally, they emerged into the ruins of the mission, exactly as she had days before. Vincent gathered the group close. Pete, you take your men and the Briggs boys. That is 9 men for the distraction team. You know what to do. Give us 30 minutes to get into position, then start the fire. Make it big and loud. Henry, Jack, Tom, and Victoria, come with me. We will go for the documents. Good luck, Pete Richardson said, gripping Vincent's hand. See you on the other side. The 2 groups separated, Pete's team heading west toward the abandoned warehouse they had chosen for the distraction, while Vincent's group moved carefully toward the center of town. They stayed in the shadows, moving from building to building, avoiding the main streets where Garrett's men were patrolling. Victoria's heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Every shadow seemed to hide an enemy. Every sound made her flinch. But Vincent moved with quiet confidence, and she tried to match his calm. They reached the back of the general store without incident. The outside staircase was right where Victoria remembered leading up to her father's office. Vincent gestured for the others to stay down while he crept up the stairs to check the door. He came back down shaking his head. Locked. "I have a key," Victoria whispered, pulling it from her pocket. Her father had given it to her years ago, and she had worn it on a chain around her neck ever since his death. "Let me go. Not alone. If we all go up, the stairs will creak and give us away. I will be quick." Before Vincent could argue, a massive explosion lit up the night to the west. Pete's team had started the distraction, and it was even bigger than planned. Flames shot into the sky and shouts filled the air as men rushed toward the fire. "Go!" Vincent hissed. "Now, while they are distracted." Victoria ran up the stairs, her boots making soft thuds on the wood. She fitted the key into the lock and turned it, praying it would still work. The door swung open and she slipped inside. Her father's office was exactly as she remembered. The desk, the filing cabinets, the smell of pipe tobacco that still lingered in the air. For a moment, emotion threatened to overwhelm her, but she forced it down. No time for grief. She had to find the documents and get out. Her father had hidden them in a false bottom of the large filing cabinet in the corner. Victoria pulled open the bottom drawer and felt along the base until she found the catch. The false bottom lifted, revealing a leather folder stuffed with papers. She grabbed it and turned to leave, but froze as boots sounded on the stairs outside, heavy, multiple sets. Men were coming. "Check every building," someone shouted. "The fire is just a distraction. They are here for something else." Victoria looked around frantically for another exit. There was a window on the far wall, but it opened onto Main Street, right where Garrett's men would see her. She was trapped. The doorknob rattled. Someone was trying to get in. Then Vincent's voice, low and urgent from right outside. "Victoria, the window, jump! I will catch you!" She did not hesitate. Victoria ran to the window, yanked it open, and climbed out onto the narrow ledge. Below, Vincent stood with his arms raised, Jack and Henry flanking him with guns drawn. "Jump!" Vincent commanded. Victoria jumped. For a heart-stopping moment, she was falling through darkness, and then strong arms caught her, breaking her fall. Vincent stumbled but kept his feet, holding her tight. "Run!" Jack shouted. They ran. Behind them, the door to the office crashed open and men poured out. Gunfire erupted, bullets zinging past Victoria's head as Vincent dragged her toward the alley. They made it around the corner just as more of Garrett's men appeared ahead, cutting off their escape route. "This way!" Henry pointed to a narrow gap between buildings, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. They pushed through. Victoria scraping her arms on rough wood, the leather folder clutched to her chest. They emerged in someone's backyard, chickens scattering in panic. Tom Warner was waiting with the horses, and they mounted up quickly. More gunfire, closer now. Victoria could hear Cole Garrett's voice screaming orders, enraged that his prey was escaping. They galloped through the chaos, heading for the mission ruins. Behind them, the warehouse was still burning, casting crazy shadows across the town. Pete Richardson and his men were falling back as planned, using the confusion to slip away. They reached the tunnel entrance and dismounted, leading the horses down into the darkness. It was nearly impossible with the panicked animals, but they managed, coaxing them through the narrow passage step by terrifying step. Finally, they emerged on the other side. Pete's group was already there, all 9 men accounted for. No one was seriously injured, though several had minor wounds from flying debris or grazing bullets. "Everyone here?" Vincent did a quick head count. "Good, let us move. We need to put distance between us and San Bernardino before Garrett figures out where we went." They rode hard through the night, pushing the horses to their limits. By dawn, they were 30 miles from San Bernardino, approaching the outskirts of Los Angeles. They stopped at a creek to water the horses and assess their situation. "We did it," Jack said, grinning despite his exhaustion. We actually did it. Victoria clutched the leather folder, hardly believing they had succeeded. Inside were dozens of documents detailing Garrett's crimes. Forged land deeds, letters discussing bribes, even a written order to have her father killed. It was more than enough to hang Cole Garrett and dismantle his organization. Vincent moved to her side. Are you all right? I think so. I cannot quite believe it worked. It worked because you were brave enough to jump out of a window and trust me to catch you. Victoria laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. That was the most terrifying moment of my life. Mine too. Vincent pulled her close, not caring that the other men could see. I thought I had lost you. You did not, and now we have what we need to stop Garrett forever. They rested for an hour, then continued to Los Angeles. The federal marshal's office was located in a sturdy building near the center of the growing city. Marshal William Cooper was a stern man in his 50s with iron gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Vincent and Victoria presented the evidence, explaining everything that had happened. Marshal Cooper listened intently, examining each document with care. This is damning, he said finally. More than enough to arrest Garrett and his lieutenants. I will organize a posse and ride to San Bernardino immediately. With this evidence, even his bought politicians will not be able to protect him. What about Victoria? Vincent asked. She is still in danger until Garrett is locked up. She can stay here under federal protection until the arrests are made. It should only be a few days. But Vincent shook his head. With respect, Marshal, I will keep her safe myself. I trust my own guns more than any promise of protection. Marshal Cooper studied Vincent for a long moment, then nodded. Fair enough, but stay in Los Angeles. Do not leave the city until I give you word that Garrett has been arrested. They found lodging at a modest hotel, and the other men dispersed to celebrate their victory. Vincent and Victoria took a room, both too exhausted to do anything but collapse on the bed fully clothed. We did it, Victoria whispered, lying beside Vincent in the darkness. My father can rest in peace now. You did it, Vincent corrected. I just helped. You did more than help. You risked everything for someone you barely knew. I knew enough. His hand found hers in the darkness, their fingers intertwining. And I was not going to let you face it alone. They fell asleep like that, holding hands, two people who had found each other in the middle of chaos and danger. 3 days later, Marshal Cooper returned with news. Cole Garrett and 14 of his men had been arrested. Several had been killed resisting arrest, including Garrett himself, who had tried to shoot his way out and been gunned down by the marshal's deputies. His organization was shattered, his bought politicians scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal. It is over, Marshal Cooper told them. Miss Durant, you are free to return to San Bernardino and reclaim your father's business. Your name has been cleared of all false charges Garrett tried to bring against you. Victoria should have felt relieved, but instead she felt uncertain. She looked at Vincent, who was standing quietly beside her, his face unreadable. Thank you, Marshal, she said. I appreciate everything you have done. They left the marshal's office and walked through the streets of Los Angeles in silence. Finally, Victoria could not stand it anymore. What are you thinking? She asked Vincent stopped walking and turned to face her. I am thinking that you have your life back now, your father's business, your home, everything you lost. And I am thinking that I'm just a cowboy with a small ranch and no right to ask you to give up that life. Vincent, let me finish. I know what I said before about courting you properly, but that was before I realized what you could go back to. You could rebuild your father's business, become one of the most successful brokers in California. You could have a fine house, society, friends, all the things I cannot give you. I will not ask you to give that up for a hard life on a ranch that barely turns a profit. Victoria stared at him, emotions warring inside her. Then she did the only thing that made sense. She grabbed the front of his shirt and kissed him hard enough to make him stumble backward. When she pulled back, Vincent looked dazed. What was that for? For being an idiot. Do you really think I care about society friends and fine houses? I've spent the last few months trying to navigate a world that did not want me, dealing with men who thought I was an upstart woman who needed to be put in her place. The only time I have felt truly alive, truly myself, was these past days with you. But your father's business was my father's dream, not mine. I tried to honor his memory by keeping it alive, but that is not what he would have wanted. He would have wanted me to be happy, to build my own life, not cling to his. Vincent's expression was a mixture of hope and disbelief. What are you saying? I am saying that I do not want to go back to San Bernardino. I do not want to be a cattle broker or navigate business deals with men who resent my existence. I want to be with you, on your ranch, building something together, if you will have me. If I will have you? Vincent laughed, and there were tears in his eyes. Victoria, you are the most amazing woman I have ever met. Smart, brave, beautiful. I would be honored beyond measure to have you as my partner. But are you sure? Ranch life is hard. Long hours, hard work, uncertainty. It is not the life you are used to. I am sure. I have never been more sure of anything. Victoria took his hands in hers. I love you, Vincent Fairfax. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you shared your water with me in the desert. I do not want a life that keeps us apart. I want to wake up beside you every morning, work beside you every day, and fall asleep in your arms every night. That is the life I choose. Vincent pulled her close, his voice rough with emotion. I love you too. From the moment you walked into my campfire looking half dead but still defiant, I knew you were someone special. I just never dreamed you would choose me. I choose you. I will always choose you. They kissed there in the middle of the Los Angeles street, not caring who saw or what anyone thought. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling through tears. So what now? Vincent asked. Now we go home to your ranch, which will be our ranch, and we start building our life together. They married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony at the ranch with Jack and Henry as witnesses, and Pete Richardson officiating since he was a licensed minister. Victoria wore a simple dress borrowed from Tom Warner's wife, and Vincent wore his best shirt and trousers. There were no flowers, no fancy decorations, no society guests, just honest people celebrating two people who had found each other against all odds. That night, in the privacy of their bedroom, Victoria and Vincent came together as husband and wife. It was tender and passionate, awkward in moments because neither had much experience, but perfect because it was theirs. Afterward, lying in Vincent's arms, Victoria felt a peace she had never known. No regrets, Vincent asked softly. Not a single one. The months that followed were not easy. Victoria had to learn the rhythms of ranch life, the endless cycle of work that came with raising horses. Her hands grew calloused, her skin tanned from long hours in the sun. Some days she was so tired she could barely move, and she often collapsed into bed aching in muscles she had not known she possessed. But she was happy, happier than she had ever been in her privileged life in San Francisco. There was satisfaction in working beside Vincent, in seeing the results of their labor. The ranch began to prosper under their combined efforts. Vincent's knowledge of horses and ranching, combined with Victoria's business sense and negotiation skills, made them formidable partners. They expanded slowly, buying more breeding stock, building better facilities, establishing a reputation for quality horses. Victoria sold her father's business and property in San Bernardino, using the money to pay off Vincent's remaining debts and invest in the ranch. Some people in town gossiped about the cattle broker's daughter who had married a poor cowboy, but Victoria did not care. She had everything she needed. A year after their marriage, Victoria discovered she was pregnant. Vincent was beside himself with joy and worry, fretting over her constantly. She had to remind him repeatedly that pregnant women had been working on ranches since the dawn of time, and she was not made of glass. Their son was born on a spring morning in 1880, with Jack's wife Martha serving as midwife. They named him Thomas Vincent Fairfax after Victoria's father and his own. Thomas was a healthy baby with Vincent's blue eyes and Victoria's dark hair, and he had lungs that could wake the entire ranch when he was hungry. 2 years later, a daughter arrived, whom they named Sarah Margaret after Vincent's mother and Victoria's grandmother. Sarah was quieter than her brother, thoughtful and observant, even as a baby. The years passed in a blur of joy and hard work. Thomas grew into a serious boy who loved horses as much as his father. Sarah developed a gift for numbers and helped Victoria manage the ranch accounts by the time she was 8. They had their struggles. Droughts came, horses got sick, accidents happened, but they faced everything together, and their love never wavered. Jack and Henry remained with the ranch, becoming more like family than employees. Both eventually married and built houses on the property. The Fairfax Ranch became a community, a place where people looked out for each other. Vincent's reputation as a horse breeder spread throughout California and beyond. Buyers came from as far as New York to purchase his stock. The modest ranch grew into one of the most successful horse operations in the state. But Vincent and Victoria never forgot where they came from or the values that guided them. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Vincent took Victoria back to the spot where they had first met, where he had shared his water with a desperate woman fleeing for her life. They sat by a campfire under the stars just as they had that first night, but now the danger was long past, and their lives were full of peace. "Do you ever miss it?" Vincent asked. "The excitement, the danger, the life you could have had?" Victoria leaned against his shoulder, watching the flames dance. "Not for a second. This is the life I was meant to have. You are the man I was meant to find. Everything that happened, as terrible as it was, led me to you. I would not change a single moment." "Not even being shot at and chased through the desert?" "Not even that." She turned to kiss him. "Though I would prefer not to repeat the experience." Vincent laughed and pulled her closer. "Deal. From now on, the only adventures we have will be the everyday kind, raising children, building a ranch, growing old together." "That sounds perfect." And it was. They had their share of hardships over the years. Vincent broke his leg badly in a riding accident when he was 42 and walked with a slight limp afterward. Victoria lost a pregnancy between Sarah and their third child, a boy they named James, who arrived 3 years after Sarah. They weathered droughts and economic downturns, celebrated births and mourned deaths, but through it all, their love remained constant. Every morning, Victoria woke up beside the man who had risked everything to keep her safe. Every night, Vincent fell asleep holding the woman who had chosen him over a life of ease and privilege. Their children grew up watching a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection, learning what real love looked like. Thomas took over the ranch when Vincent was 60, allowing his parents to slow down and enjoy their grandchildren. Sarah married a lawyer and moved to San Francisco, but she visited often, bringing her own children to run wild on the ranch where their mother had grown up. James became a veterinarian, using his skills to help the ranch and other operations throughout California. On a warm evening in 1920, 42 years after they first met, Victoria and Vincent sat on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over the California desert. Both were gray now, lined with the marks of a life well lived, but their hands were still intertwined as they had been that first night in the darkness. "Do you remember when you caught me jumping out of that window?" Victoria asked. "I remember thinking I'd never been so terrified in my entire life." "You caught me. I will always catch you." Victoria smiled and squeezed his hand. "I know. You have been catching me for 42 years. And I will keep catching you for as long as we both live." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. Two people who had found each other in the chaos of the frontier and built a life that surpassed anything either had imagined. Their ranch sprawled around them, home to their children and grandchildren, a legacy of hard work and enduring love. Cole Garrett had surrounded the town with men at every exit, but the cowboy had found an exit they did not know. That unknown exit had led to freedom, and freedom had led to love, and love had led to a lifetime of happiness neither Vincent nor Victoria would trade for anything in the world. As the last light faded from the sky, Victoria rested her head on Vincent's shoulder, exactly as she had done countless times before. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," Vincent replied, his voice still strong despite his years. "Always have, always will." And in the quiet of the California night, surrounded by the life they had built together, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.